Attention, soldiers, you are now entering the war zone. Please keep close to your compatriots and have your weapons at the ready. If you would like to skip the introduction, please fast forward to about 7.5 minutes. And now, poets at war.
Once, there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy.
Suppose I'm writing a novel. I write, Mary laid down her book. Next moment came a knock at the door. For Mary, who's got to live in the imaginary time of the story, there's no interval between putting down the book and hearing the knock. But I, her creator, between writing the first part of that sentence and the second, may have gone out for an hour's walk and spent the whole hour thinking about Mary.
We make things by the law in which we are made. We create because we are created.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all in the darkness bind them.
Tolkien and Lewis, both in their way, lifted me out of this world to show me a thundering beauty. And when I read the last sentence and came tumbling back to earth, I could still hear the peal. I hear it to this day. God allowed those stories to lift the veil on the imaginary world to show me the real world behind it, which ended up being, in the end, the one I was already in. The real world, at least in part, isn't out there somewhere, nor is it in my mind. It's here, right under my feet, all around me. Tolkien and Lewis held the fabric of Narnia or Middle-earth in one hand and clutched our world in the other, building a bridge across which we could set out for perilous realms and yet return safely with some of the beauty we found there.
My first and last philosophy, that which I believe in with unbroken certainty, I learnt in the nursery. I generally learnt it from a nurse, that is, from the solemn and star-appointed priestess at once of democracy and tradition. The things I believed most then, the things I believe most now, are the things called fairy tales.
We live in a moment that's unlike any other moment, a moment of bizarre tyranny, a moment of overreach.
I was nearly torn apart by a crazy doctor.
A moment of fear. It's like, and how are we living? How are we standing up in this moment?
I was made a slave by a bunch of mangy pirates.
Are we full of joy? Like, are we characters who are full of joy and unafraid?
I'm eaten. Got that? Eaten by a fire-breathing dragon. And not to mention being tossed, squashed, and scared practically to death.
It's like, how do we image God in this particular narrative in which we've been placed, in this chapter? And we get trained for that by reading about Sam and Frodo and Aragorn and Gandalf, and reading, Charlotte's Web and Animal Farm, and reading about Prince Caspian. Like, when you're little, you read those things and you read stories when you're older, and it reinforces what is the courageous action of a character in this moment.
Yet you stand before me.
Well, yeah.
Think, boy. What kind of an adventure would you have had if I brought you here with a turn of the page?
I wept bitterly, and then I said to myself, when everything happens quite miserably, then He sends help. I have always read so. People must first of all suffer a great deal before they can bring anything to accomplishment.
God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by His Son, whom He has appointed heir of all things, through whom also He made the worlds.
For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of Him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves, groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body.
minstrel boy to the war is gone. In the ranks of death you'll find him. His father's sword he had girded on, and his wild harp slung behind him. God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful harp shall praise thee. The minstrel fell, but the foeman's chain could not bring that proud soul under. The harp he loved ne'er spoke again, for he tore its cords asunder, and said, no chain shall sully thee, thou soul of love and bravery. Thy songs were made for the pure and free, they shall never sound in slavery. The chains upon the people came, and they gave away their freedom. No prophets left, they then grew lame, they accepted their false kingdom. But one young man saw the minstrel boy, and he took up the shredded strings, and with great love remade with joy the sacred tool for truth to sing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you want to steer this, Brendan. This is your idea, but like I
Yeah.
have my thoughts, but how do we
I
want
was
to go
just
about this one?
I was just assuming we would do what we usually do and just talk for an hour and
Well,
a
I
half.
mean, we're
and then
doing that.
Call it.
We're talking. We're doing that. I'm just saying,
so-
like, what are some of the things? Because you were kind of phrasing it in our discussion in the host chat about like there's some stuff you disagree with me on, and you know that I've said or this, that, or the other, and so like,
Oh, well.
that's a springboard. I mean, start
Well,
talking.
No, that was for a different topic.
Was that a different
but-
topic?
Yeah, I think that was a different topic,
But you are much more like
Um,
inclined toward like organized, quote unquote, traditional education, and I'm much more in the homeschool, learn yourself kind of category.
yeah, yes and no. I mean, okay, so let me just start off with the joke I wanted to say. What does an artist need to learn? Everything.
Yeah, of course.
You need to learn everything. That's it. That's the episode for today. Good night, guys. Roll
Be
the
your
outro.
family's bard.
Be a family's bard. But seriously, I was actually the reason why so what I was disagreeing with you on the thoughts is the democratization of art really a good thing? That's
Right.
where I'm kind of like, I'm not sure, because but the question that I phrased it is art and education. What does an artist need to know, and how should they be encouraged in their development? I think that I think this is going to be a weird hybrid of both like a air quotes practical application in awful air quotes and sort of just theoretical stuff. And the reason why I first thought of this was because I was thinking about a video I was considering making for miniature painting. There are a whole bunch of mini painting tutorials. There are a whole bunch of like beginner's guides and things like that, but all of them talk about all this kind of stuff. And I was sitting here going, I kind of want to do my own version of what do you absolutely need to know and what should you work on immediately. Like, this is what you need in order to start and make something decent, and this is what you should work on in order to improve yourself the fastest early on. That was what I was originally thinking of the video, and so I thought, oh, well, let's just, when we were talking about subjects, I was like, oh, let's do a Poets at War on the general education, right? I'm not necessarily saying go to art school, right? Art school has some benefits, but it's probably an awful lot like film school, where the benefit you get is meeting friends and networking rather than learning on your own. If you want to learn on your own, I would say having a tutor really helps. Having someone who can look at your thing and go, this is good, this isn't good, and this is how you fix it. Now go do it, and don't mess up next time. I think that can be incredibly invaluable, super helpful. Like, I never underestimate the power of a tutor. But the rest of, like, the actual skills and stuff, you can go on YouTube. You can get a book. You know, I took one drawing class in college, and it was while I was technically a non-matriculated student, and it just fulfilled an elective. Like, I'm not saying I didn't learn anything, but it wasn't as helpful as my individual personal study later on.
Right.
But the thing that I think is really interesting and really important to talk about, and this might just cascade into a general education conversation rather than specifically art, how important it is to understand, how does light work? How does color work? How do our eyes see color? Because your eyes can recognize what colors something is supposed to be, even if the picture you are coloring isn't using that color, right?
Right.
Our eyes have and brains have the ability to recognize the pattern and then extrapolate what it's supposed to be, even though it's not what we are actually seeing. And if we put what it's supposed to be, it would look wrong.
Right.
You know? And that's not even getting into, like, the iconography and history. If we're, and I'm just thinking about artists like visual art. What about storytellers? They're artists.
Yeah.
What do they need to know? Congratulations, you've just opened up the entire thing. Sci-fi, time to learn science. History, writing a fantasy, learn historical cultures and why they developed. Learn mythology, learn this. Like,
not to mention the entirety of story structure, which ultimately snowballs into anthropology and the development of mythology and how that they have been used politically and socially to engineer entire societies in the past, you know. And so yeah, that's a whole other ball of wax, way beyond just how do you structure a story, you know. So
yeah, I mean, so that's actually something that's, like, I really like that you mentioned that, because I feel like when talking about art specifically, any art form, pick your art form, it doesn't matter. There are two sort of skills that you learn. The first set of skills is the actual thing you use when making the art. So, like, story structure, if you are a storyteller, paintbrush, paint strokes, thickness of paint, thinness of paint if you are a painter, drawing, how do you hold the pencil, how do you move your arm, how do you make shapes, how do you do what's called oh my gosh, there's form and then there's gesture. How do you do gesture? All of this, like, those are the things to make the art. And if you just learn these, you can be a decent artist.
Right.
But I think, like, with video games, I've heard people talk about, like, video games, what you're doing is you're crafting an experience.
Yes.
I don't think that's limited to just video games. Right. Especially narrative things. But even a painting of a cliff seaside can be an experience, you know. Even music is an experience. Good Lord.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You know, poetry is an experience in and of itself. You like
software design.
Software design.
Yeah.
And in order to make a authentic feeling experience, you need to experience it yourself, right? Because otherwise you're trying to come up with something and you don't know what you're trying to make. So I don't know. I thought that, I mean, I think we all agree, yes, you need to know everything. So now the second question is, how do you encourage someone in their development? Because I'm not sure paying thousands and thousands of dollars and going thousands and thousands of dollars into debt to go to art school is necessarily the best way to encourage someone's artistic ability. Similarly speaking, I don't know if my artistry, my drawing ability, my painting ability, my whatever, would have gotten farther faster if my parents had done something different. I love my parents. They did a great job raising me. But I got hooked on certain experiences that that sucked my time away, and I didn't work on these things that now, I don't want to say I regret, but I'm kind of miffed that I didn't work on them more. Sorry, Joshua, you were going to say something.
No. I think that the question first to answer what you're getting at is what is the end goal of you being an artist? And a lot of artists, people who are interested in art, who are hobbyists in art, can't quite answer that yet. They don't really have, and some of them aren't ever really taught to have a goal. Some of them innately have a goal within them that's just immediate, and like that's the whole purpose of them having the hobby in the first place. But it just depends on your telos. Because I would say a person who just wants to get better for the sake of having options in the future, you know, but basically I could go the artist route, you know, for this, that, or thing or the other. That's different than someone who's like, this is my goal because I have a heart for ministry through what I'm doing, right? To actually reach people, to actually change things, to actually have an idealistic, you know, impact upon the people around them. Those aren't the only two, but those are the two big buckets that most of them can fit into. There's other ideas and stuff in those categories, but I think that if we don't take the telos into account, we're not going to know which is the best path, because if your goal is to make money, I think that even though it's no guarantee whatsoever, you pretty much have to do both. You have to do your own work, your own study, and dig and dive as deep as you possibly can into that, and make as many of the connections as you possibly can, even with your own dollar or borrow dollars or whatever. Like you have to go whole hog in all directions in order to make it in a saturated industry.
Which it's oversaturated, let me tell you.
It is, but it's also a lot of people have pulled out in the last couple decades and stuff too, because the saturation was realized, and a lot of the conservative pushback has been not to go into those fields, go into the less cluttered fields, which I agree with to some extent, but at the same time, saturation does not mean saturation does not get rid of, and this is too many negatives. Hold on, let me see if I can phrase this right without all the double negatives. There is a saturated market, but there is also an absence of quality.
Because everybody and their mother can edit videos now with the technology.
Right, and the executives
to use it close to home.
Well, I think that's more of an executive failure than it is a failure of the saturation necessarily, right? All the people who can edit video, whether or not they should, right? I think that's an executive problem. Executives not understanding the craft. And not being. This is the exact same problem we have with the president not having any military experience for many years when he's the lead, the commander in chief of the military, right? Yeah. And so when you first had Hollywood, the first executives were people who were making the first films. And that slowly changed over time to the people who had the money, who got the money through business dealings instead of making the art. We also have the same thing in a whole lot of other industries, you know, people who can do the groundwork versus sit in a chair. And visionaries go by the wayside for conservative executives that can keep the money rolling in, right? Like that's the idea, for the cheapest price.
It's interesting to frame it like that, because I've never heard the executives in Hollywood labeled as conservatives before.
But they're conservative,
but they
financially.
absolutely are.
Yeah. Financially, they're conservative.
They're trying to mitigate their risk as much as possible.
They're not trying to grow, especially now. They're trying to stabilize, because the world is getting unstabilized. Bob Iger's this way right now. Honestly, the only reason Bob Iger had any real success in what he was doing was because he actually trusted his gut and trusted the people who were with him as to what quality was, and purchased all the quality. You know, he actually spent the money to get the quality, and then he had all the quality, except he didn't have the people. Because he can't afford to pay them, because he bought all of their library instead of their labor.
And he sucked the life out of them.
Right.
Well, he's not alone. It wasn't just Iger.
No.
Well, no, but I get that. Like I think what you were trying to say is, just because there's an oversaturated market doesn't mean, like, you're right, there is an absence of quality.
But that's not due to the saturation.
That's not necessarily. No, it's not due to the saturation. It's in addition to. And your reaction that conservatives are pull out of oversaturated markets, go into things that people need, but aren't doing the jobs of, like electrician and plumber. If you want to make money be an electrician or a plumber,
agreed,
you make bank doing that. I'm not lying when I say I have considered doing a career shift. But
the thing is, the bureaucracy is taking over those roles too, because and this is where unions come in and mess everything else up, which is a whole other thing.
Unions.
But the
contractor.
Well, you be a contractor.
That's what I'm doing.
And yeah, you can be a contractor, but if you're just starting out as a contractor, even if you've gone to a trade school, like the average consumer is not necessarily even looking for that. So you're still competing with all the Tom, Dick, and Harrys and everything else. So it's like, okay, you need the experience, you need to grind, you need to get it done. So the fact is, no matter what you choose, even if you're in those positions, unless you get a big union contract or something of that nature, you're not going to be making bank right away.
No.
You know?
No, that's true. But...
So this is the thing. They say go to a trade school, and what follows a trade school to get a real job? You get on with a good contractor, and this is what they're hoping for. This is what the good picture is. You get on with a good contractor company, and they treat you well and do right by you because you do good work. And you start out fairly high, and you get the reputation of the company and blah, blah, blah. But quite frankly, that market is oversaturated because there aren't enough people that have created contracting roles, because these are conservative people who just want the work. They don't want the business.
Yeah.
Right?
We were talking after the show last time about the E-Myth by Gerber, I think.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch of technicians who want to do work, but they don't want to run a business. They don't have the management or the innovation side to turn their job into a wealth developer, which I know that, Christmasism, gift giving, wealth, blah, 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 whatever. We're not going to get into that fight right now. But I think that where I was originally going to go before that whole thing, it is not oversaturation, but like you're right. There is sort of a lack of quality, both in terms of like actual physical quality, because the art that you see on Google searches, they're all going to be like the top maybe 50 people, probably less. And that is for one thing. It's probably, no, 50 is too much. I would say it's going to be top 25. Assuming it's not coming from like an animation studio. If you look up like characters from an animated movie or whatever, right? Assuming you're not looking up stuff like that, all of the best art that you see, all the stuff that gets all the clicks, that gets Google the money that they promote, that's all going to be the top infinitesimally small number of people. You know, and meanwhile, if you are a low-income person and you want to commission a piece of art and you go onto like Fiverr or something, you might spend $200 with someone because their portfolio looked good, but then when they turn out your thing, it looks like garbage.
Right.
Not garbage, but it doesn't look nearly as good. And you're like, I dropped $200 on this. Now, how much is art really worth? You know, is good art worth more than $200? Yeah, probably. But you know, it's a sort of weird thing where and the where it's like you obviously haven't been working on developing your skill, or you have worked on developing your skill, but you haven't pushed and pushed and pushed. Maybe you're young. I don't know. Maybe if you're not young, what are you doing? It's and sort of like this is why I was sort of hesitant on the democratization of art, because while yes, I think it's good that people have access to the tools, and I think doing art for art's sake and for enjoyment and making something going, this isn't the greatest piece in the world, but gosh darn it, I made it. I do like that. I promote that sort of an idea. But when you're starting to try to, but when like every person with the slightest artist inclination and likes video games go, I want to be a character designer. Like, come on. Anyway.
Is part of it that we don't have the proper mediums to actually be able to get the people who are wanting to purchase this stuff the information that they actually need? Because you were saying that, like, Google, it's all the top 50, 25 people. But is it possible that that is the entirety of the problem? That you don't have, like, you'd have a phone book or something, like a digital phone book where it says, these are all the artists, these are the works that they've done for the price range that you're looking for.
That would be an interesting...
Is that part of it?
That would be an interesting project to create, because you see, like, there are websites like ArtStation where artists go there and they share their work and they use that to get jobs at studios or whatever for whatever things. Again, I'm focusing specifically on visual art here, right? Storytelling, it gets so much more complicated, but even though that's what we primarily focus on in this group. I just, it would be really interesting to have that kind of an infrastructure somehow. I'm not sure how you would pull that off, because it would have to be opt-in sort of, but at the same time, like, we know it exists because Amazon exists. Like Amazon, you can literally go to the side and check off within this price range. Done.
As far as
the trick would be,
really quick, as far as the price range, like, that's something we don't necessarily have, but we do have portfolio everywhere. That's called social media.
And speaking of social media, here is some of ours, sort of, kind of. Attention all Christian writers and creative peoples! Are you searching for a place to share your work and receive encouragement from fellow wordsmiths? Look no further than the Broodcast. Inspired by the legendary Inklings of old, a group of writers who banded together during the Second Great War. The Broodcast is your monthly gathering for inspiration, fellowship, and critique. Join us as we share our stories and support our fellow soldiers on our creative missions. Enlist in the Broodcast community today at joshuadavidling.com/brood. Travel cyberspace, serve the greatest cause. Join the ranks of the Brood today.
Now is the time for your book recommendation minute with Alexander Robertson, the part of the show where Alexander Robertson comes out and recommends a book.
I was at the Fight Laugh Feast conference recently, and I picked up this gem from the Noggin Nose booth, where I was lucky enough to meet with the author. I expected that I would enjoy it. It was Doug Wilson's Book of the Month a while ago, but I did not anticipate exactly how fantastic it would be. However, before I continue with my praise, I probably ought to explain what exactly this book is. The Thing is a collection of 5 stories by Rivers Houseal. The subtitle is Short Stories of Things and the People That They Encounter, and it very much lives up to the promise of that subtitle. Each story is based around a meeting of thing and person and the events which follow. From a typewriter being found in the middle of the road by an aspiring writer, to a deformed potato found by a soldieress in the Women's Land Army amidst World War II, each story is beautifully crafted in every facet. The characters are believable to the point where I was convinced I had met many of them, and the form of the short story is so very well suited to these tales. It is a relatively rare thing for a book or story of any form to bring a tear to my eye, but multiple stories in this collection did. The themes of God's grace and sovereignty resonate very deeply with me, and the skill with which Miss Houseal works beautifies these themes and raises them to a level of glory which I have very rarely seen. This book is absolutely marvelous, and I recommend it heartily to everyone who has a taste for stories of any form. I'm certain that nobody will be disappointed. In my part of the world, at least, to see a typewriter sitting in the middle of the road is not normal. But if I have learned one thing, it is that odd things do happen, and there it sat. Furthermore, I was raised to know that when one spies a typewriter in trouble, one rescues it. So I did. Excerpt from Of When a Typewriter Was Found, the first story in this collection.
Are you looking for thought-provoking Christian perspectives that bring unity across denominations? Then you'll want to check out Logosophia magazine. As a free online interdenominational publication, Logosophia publishes a variety of creative works like articles, stories, and poems on different theological themes each quarter. Their goal is to have respectful conversations that highlight our shared beliefs outlined in the Apostles', Nicene, and Athanasian creeds, as we clarify our differences. So if you want to dive deeper into your faith while learning from other Christian expressions, subscribe to Logosophia magazine today on their website or listen to their podcasts. We look forward to journeying with you.
And now back to the trenches on Poets at War.
Yeah.
And as far as that goes, like you said, Google's a whole other thing. You know, there's a lot of gatekeeping all over the place because people are trying to control the web. Alex and I were talking about that a lot earlier today in another conversation. But have you guys heard of Preston Mutenga?
Nope.
Looking him up.
Okay, so Into the Spider-Verse 2. The Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, right?
What did he do on it?
He did the Lego segments.
Oh, yes, I have heard of it. Yep.
He was 14 years old making Lego videos on YouTube, and Sony found him. And before they even knew he was a minor, basically had him contracted, and then we're like, "Oh, you sure that's your birthday? Okay, we need to talk to your parents."
Yeah.
And so
they found him because he made a Lego version of the Across the Spider-Verse trailer.
Mm-hmm.
After the film already had a trailer, they said, well, I guess we need to throw this kid's work in.
And that speaks to doing the work.
Yeah.
And doing it with purpose, because he wouldn't have gotten it if it wasn't specifically Spider-Man, because they were looking for Spider-Man Lego video, whatever else. And so this speaks to all the kids who are doing and adults who are doing the Darren Doan style thing of, I'm going to make an ad for McDonald's and put it on Twitter. You know what I mean? Just make stuff and put it out there for free, to these companies, to people who can pay you, and be like, hey, here's the deal. Contact somebody, say, hey, can I come to your location and film for a little bit and make a promo video, make a hype video, do your thing, right? And that doesn't just go for video. You can be an artist and do the exact same thing in your own style, make a poster, for them and print it up and give it to them for free. You know what I'm saying? And that creates goodwill. This is doing the goodwill thing in order to garner attention. And so, you have that avenue, but it involves grinding once again.
Yeah.
So, there's, go ahead.
Well, and that grinding thing, it's like we're not saying. I don't think it would be unkind and unfair to say that you can't put in the work and expect to get a job, right? That wasn't what I was trying to say. Especially with my comment earlier about school and how what it does is it gives you connections, right? School also gives you a good practice regimen. School creates a framework in which you can grind. And I think that that is also a good thing, especially as somebody who has a hard time doing stuff on his own unless he has someone holding him to it.
Right.
So I'm totally like, I'm not saying art school is bad, although I am saying it's extremely expensive.
Right.
But like, this goes back again to your question at the beginning of what is the telos? Because there is a, like, you can do it for yourself, I guess, but I think art is meant to be shared.
Yes.
Right. While you know, you talked a few episodes back about Spielberg versus oh my gosh, what's his name? Nolan. Spielberg versus Nolan, and how, you know, you think Spielberg had the better idea. To a certain degree, yes. I think Nolan I think Nolan is wrong, but I don't necessarily think his mentality is wrong, where he's like, I am the artist, I know what my vision is, I am going to make it, and if you don't get it, that's your problem.
Right.
I don't necessarily have an issue with that.
Right.
I just think that his decision making is poor
Right.
on what he considers to be his artistic vision.
Right. Right.
But you know, like, if you're going to make this your vocation, and or your tent making, if you want to make art your tent making, like Paul says, you know, a method of making money, while you do whatever it is you're doing, maybe it's also your vocation, because doing art as tent making is really a weird decision in my opinion, but whatever. Because of how much, just because of how much energy and emotion and all of your being it takes, compared to
Brian Sauvé does it.
yeah. I mean, he's able to do it. Yeah. But that's my point. It takes special people to do that, right? And it takes special, you know, it takes a special kind of person to do that.
It also kind of takes systems to do that.
Yeah. And if you're,
I know that.
Yeah.
Go.
No. Go. I'm talking.
I know that Nate Wilson talked about this whenever he right after Brandon Sanderson did the whole Kickstarter thing, launched the biggest Kickstarter of all time. These 4 books right here.
Yep.
But he was talking about how there used to be systems where artists could survive by doing their art because of patronage.
Right.
And the flip side of that patronage was that, you know, you had to make specific pieces of art for your patron, but you were also allowed to, whenever you were not doing that, make the art that you wanted.
Yeah.
And we don't have systems like that anymore. Like we're it seems like we're kind of trying to build something like it with Patreon and stuff, but I don't think that quite works. Right. It's not the same.
It isn't the same because of how self-reliant and self-willed and self-propelled we're trying to be. Patreon itself, it's not people on Patreon. Like, yeah, you could set up a vote on Patreon. Okay, guys, what should I do next? And the patrons can vote. But you are the one setting up the parameters. You are the one setting the rules. You are still in charge, even if they are the ones who are paying you. It's not the same as before, where a noble says, I would like a painting of my daughter. I am your patron. I am patronizing you, which is where that word comes from.
Yeah.
Make a portrait of my daughter. And you say, okay, sir. And you make it. takes an afternoon, 2, 3, maybe, depending on how difficult you're making it. You get it done, but then the rest of your time, you're, like you said, you're doing your own work and stuff, and you can survive on that.
I think there's actually a deeper problem than what you're pointing at. We have some people who will pay for art and will do the Patreon thing, whether or not they get, you know, the kind of perks that a normal patron from back in the day would have. But in mass, we do not, like we used to. I think the reason for that I think the reason for that is this. People consider art consumable and not transcendent.
Yes. Absolutely.
As a result, why should I pay for Barely Biblical when I have VeggieTales?
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Why should I pay for new cartoons when I have Looney Tunes and Betty Boop silent films? They're so much better, blah, blah, blah. Like, why? You see what I'm saying? Like, as a result, in this system,
that's okay.
Well, I'm saying in this system, you now have, because art is not considered transcendent, even though it is, I would argue by its very nature, art is a transcendent thing. Because of the devalues art to the point where everything of every time and every place ends up competing, because the only thing that you consume art with is your time and attention. And as a result, you only have so much time and attention, and it becomes a zero-sum game.
Yes. Yep. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to throw a couple different trains of thought out there and see where we end up following from that. First one, I got to go to my first actual concert this last Sunday.
I didn't know
it was
your first. That's
Arcadian
awesome.
Wild, Good Morning Bedlam, and Jack Thompson. 3 folk bands, fantastic. All of them are great. Go listen to them. Everybody watching this, go listen to them.
Especially
All of their
Arcadian
stuff.
Wild.
They're all great.
I love Arcadian Wild.
Have you listened to Bedlam at all?
No, I don't think so, but I will.
They are lesser known. They're just as good as Arcadian Wild, though.
Nice.
They're so good. Especially live.
I can't hear Arcadian Wild without thinking Arcadian Wild, like Arcadian Day. Wait, no. That's unfortunate.
But yeah, I got to go to that recently, and it was fantastic being in the music hall and standing around with her for 6 hours watching the concert, all that fun stuff. It was so cool. I went with a lot of people, but one of them was a friend of mine who is a avid concert goer, has gone to 15 concerts in the last 2 years, something like that. And he said something along the lines of, the next day after, whenever we were talking about it, said something along the lines of, people don't go see live music anymore because they think they can get the same experience on their phone.
Yeah.
With Spotify and all that. And it's a fundamentally different experience to go see something live and to patronize in a lesser form, not the proper patronage, but to patronize the artists live and talk to them and buy their stuff there than it is to listen to them 400 times on Spotify or whatever.
Yep.
The second line of thought that I want to bring in is Jason Farley on Knox Unplugged. Talks about how whenever he and his wife bought their house, they made a pact that they were not going to fill it with anything except for real art that they purchased from artists. They were not going to go to Hobby Lobby and purchase, whatever passes for art at Hobby Lobby these days. Not the kitsch that you find there. And I think that those are the mindsets that we need to have. It is kind of what Brendan was talking about earlier, is art as an experience, but a little bit different as well, because it's being willing to pay for real things as opposed to imitations or pale copies. Yes?
Well, it's not just that. It has less to do with the actual art itself at that point. Although it does some, you are purchasing art so that art can continue to be made in the future, and also so that both the art that you purchase and the art that is subsequently produced from that purchase can be an inheritance for future generations, including your own, right? There is a covenantally, this is why I think a lot of Baptists struggle with this. I love my Baptist listeners, but like, this is the idea of making a better world for the future for your posterity and their peers. This is a very covenantally minded way of looking at things. It's not just, oh, I buy the vinyl because the vinyl, it's yes, it's a different experience, and oh, nice packaging, it all makes me happy, but
it also sounds better.
I disagree, but the other thing is, it depends on your record player, but the point is that, and also the kind of music, but the point being that you can do all of the special, I was listening to, this will give you a better idea. I was listening to Bright Hearth with Brian Sauvé and his wife, this most recent one. At this time it was on productivity, and they were talking about how she likes journaling, and she talks about how she used to think listening to audiobooks was stupid and dumb, and why would you can't really say you read a book if you went to audio, because she's so tactile about her pen and so tactile about journaling and doing all those sorts of things. And that's fine. I'm not saying anything bad about that, but like, I'm a person who can almost only experience words through audio because I'm dyslexic. And so what? It doesn't mean it's a better mode. You and I were having this conversation about formats and stuff. The format questions they get to the wrong thing. Like, everyone has their own type of experience that they like more than someone else. And it's not that maybe some are better than others objectively. I don't know. But the point is, you're getting something more than just the product. You're getting the message. And then the message, when you pay for one that you particularly enjoy, or from someone that gives particularly good messages in their work, and not just messages, but the transcendent art of a well-crafted message, right? When you put all that together and you actually pay for it, it funds more of that thing to help change and baptize the imaginations of generations to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brendan,
and
you got big eyes, like you're like, I'm not sure what expression
I'm waiting. Well, does Alex have something you said you had two trains of thought, or a couple trains of thought?
Those were the two trains of thought. It was one, the concerts, and then the other art, like purchasing, going to concerts instead of listening to the same artists on Spotify or whatever, and then going and purchasing real art instead of kitsch. Those were the two thoughts. They're similar, but I feel like there is a difference there.
I just lost what Joshua just said, but we'll get back to that in a second.
That's fine.
I just want to say two things. Three things. One will lead into two, and then three is a separate thing. I have a friend from college. She was a music major. Her instrument of choice was violin. She was frustrated because everyone said that even all the music people said that her desired career was not something that would have been viable. Because she wanted to work the Ren Fair scene.
Oh, yeah.
She spoke with my dad, and Dad said, yeah, go ahead, go for it, do it. Dad was a history professor, and she was taking history classes because part of it for requirement, part for whatever. She's now in a band that tours across the country at Ren fairs. She seems to be doing well enough for herself, thank you very much. And she plays fiddle, which is violin but with extra steps. And when we go to the Ren, we try to go to the Ren fairs that they are at, because of that. It's a different experience being at a Ren fair and listening to that band play on stage when they're interacting with the audience, and the audience is heckling them and they're heckling the audience back, and it's a fun time. Everyone's having enjoyment, and you also, it's your friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that springboards to, I think one of the things about art and why Jason Farley, we're buying from specific artists, not just whatever's there. We're buying from specific people. I think the reason why that's important and why we think that holds weight, even though we're not necessarily phrasing it like this, I think it has to do with relationship.
Yep.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
And because that's the one thing, like, that is us being made, I don't want to get preachy, but us being made in the image of God, right?
Yeah.
Genesis, it is not good for man to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
God, before the foundation of the world, was three persons in relationship with himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We being made in the image of God, we have that desire and that need for relationship. And so when I go and see my friend, I will pay my friend money for her CDs, well, for her band's CDs. I will go there. I will, when we see each other, we'll laugh and reminisce about old times or whatever, but also that it's so much better to see her in person than it is to see her, or just to listen to her on a CD, even if the CD is darn good. You know, her music's great, but you listen to that thing live and it's so much more fun, you know, sort of from an experience.
It's an experience.
Yes. The last thing, you know, it was funny. I find it amusing. We started talking about this like, oh, this is art and education, right? We're talking about what does an artist need to learn? It's sounding as we're talking like it's not the, like, yeah, artists needs to learn a bunch, right? Artist does need to learn almost everything if you want to make good art. But it sounds to me like what we need to do is teach an appreciation of beauty.
Yeah.
To the
Absolutely.
masses.
Well, this is what Poets at War is trying to be. You almost have to have, because the world has become so disenchanted over the past century, you almost have to re-educate your audience in order to appreciate your work. Which is why I'm trying to do nonfiction through Poets at War, because it's the quickest way for me to do this sort of retraining. Instead of creating a whole bunch of well-crafted nonfiction books, I'm going the quote-unquote lazy route with a podcast. Although I'd argue podcasts are their own thing with their own set of rules, and you can do a good one and a bad one and whatever else. And Poets at War has been varied in its quality, and it will continue to be as I make it better. But I'm trying to retrain folks so that they can appreciate epic poetry. Like, that's my actual like goal, right, for myself. But also, along the way, the broadcast happens, and I got all these other artist buddies, and I'm trying to get them promoted as well. And this would be a good point where he could be like, hey, everybody, listen, Sergeant Ollie here telling you about such and such. But anyway, I don't know if that'll end up happening that way, but we'll see in the editing process. But point being that, like, this is, you got to develop relationships with your audience, retrain them in the enchantment that you're trying to create. And train your audience, because this is the same exact thing, not just for fantasy and storytelling and all these other sorts of things that I'm into, but it's the same for things like jazz, you know,
like jazz.
Almost the entirety of the movie La La Land is him retraining her to like jazz. You know.
I'm going to say I'm glad you brought up enchantment, because I was trying to find a way to not bring up enchantment, because I feel like I beat the enchantment drum way louder and way longer than I reasonably should. However,
Keep beating it.
Brendan,
we need to. Everybody needs to hear it. We need to hear it. Keep beating the drum.
What do you think the general's report I wrote is about?
Brendan, please
What?
spank that horse. Do it again for me, Brendan.
Sounds so weird when you phrase it that way. Ugh.
And not only phrasing it that way.
Into the mic and say yes. ASMR.
Yeah, I've actually thought about doing.
No, we are not becoming an ASMR podcast.
No, we're not.
I will nuke us from orbit. I don't have that power, but I will.
Member supported public radio.
So, yeah, but like, and eventually you'll hear this again. I think beauty is the easiest gateway to re-enchantment.
Yep.
I think that I say easiest. It's not easy, but like that conversation that we had a few days, I don't even know how long it's been ago, Alex, where you asked, like, how do we bring enchantment?
How do you show
back?
people that they are disenchanted?
How do you show people that they're disenchanted? Yeah, you could argue until they're blue in the face, but one of the things is that, like I mentioned, like have them watch Studio Ghibli, and we basically the conclusion was exposure therapy.
Yeah.
I think that part of the issue is because of the lack of quality. And we could argue about, I know we argued about formats before. We could argue the easy accessibility of art through the internet and the easy accessibility of not good art through the internet specifically.
Yeah.
I think that hinders, not because of it might hinder it because people just see it and they think, oh, another thing, right? It's not necessarily like it's not like an actual roadblock per se. It's just another thing that sort of confuses the issue, right? But like finding beauty in the world, in the natural world, I think is one big step, but also like appreciating what is good art, finding good art, that whole thing. And then, but then you run into the problem of how do you get people to recognize what is beautiful, right?
Yep.
Because, and how do you get people to recognize what is beautiful and then give that the majority of their time, not all of their time, right? Because I'm not, let's see, everybody has their guilty pleasure movie or guilty pleasure song. I'm not about to say don't listen to Sabaton or don't listen to Only Time by Enya because it's been memed to death on the internet. I'm not about to say that, because like,
so what are your thoughts on Hallmark movies?
I don't care. I don't waste my time with it. But you should try to spend the majority of your quality time should be spent with things that are beautiful, right?
Yes.
And the problem is now no one knows what that is because guys will rated R alert. Guys will spend time
you say as the child walks in.
Oh,
say
of course.
Good night. Say good night.
Good night, Hazel. You
See
can't
ya,
hear me, I
Hazel.
hope.
Alrighty, they said hi. You go to bed now, okay? Thank you, sweetie. I love you. You okay? You'll be all right. Go ahead, go in there, okay? If it's
That
a
is a
little
beauty.
cold, you can turn up the heater a little bit, okay?
Yep.
All right.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, you got that right.
A father being a father to his daughter. That is a beautiful thing, and we need stories like that. Anyway, why are the dads always dead? Anyway,
moms are dead a lot of the time too.
Why are the parents always dead? because it is a lack of beauty, and because it is a powerful and important thing, and people can't possibly imagine how terrible that is. So it makes
instantaneous sympathy.
Yeah. But like, you know, we talk about like, oh yeah, you know, you have to spend your quality time with that. How many guys watch pornography?
Mm-hmm.
I would argue pornography is inherently unbeautiful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yet, it is so addictive and so sucking, and it pulls people in. And when you have a world that's saturated, not necessarily, I'm not saying, well, I mean, yes, there's a saturation of pornography, but that's aside the point. When you're just saturated with so much blah.
Yep.
Like, how do you...
What can men do against such reckless hate?
Yes. You know?
And the answer is Bombadil. But he wasn't in the movie, so people need to be educated.
Start with watching the movie. Then go read the Hobbit book. Then read the Hobbit or watch the Hobbit movies and laugh at them. Then read Lord of the Rings and appreciate it.
No, don't watch the Hobbit movies until after you've read the Lord of the Rings.
No, that's fair.
I have weird opinions on the Hobbit movies that people like. I don't necessarily think they're good, but I don't think that they're bad for the reasons people think they are. Also, I know how it was made, so I have a whole lot of sympathy for Peter Jackson. Good Lord, man was dealt the worst hand he could possibly have been dealt.
It is absolutely incredible that those movies came out as thoroughly watchable as they did.
Exactly.
They are summer popcorn blockbusters all the way. As far as guilty pleasure things go, that's probably one of the few guilty pleasures that I actually have because I'll sit down and watch them. But it is a miracle that they turned out as good as they did.
Exactly.
And a testament to Peter Jackson's filmmaking prowess.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I'm glad someone understands and agrees with me.
Well, let's focus on this for just a second. Not specifically The Hobbit, but you brought up guilty pleasures a couple times now, and I wanted to speak on this specifically because Brian Sauvé mentioned this in the same podcast I mentioned earlier, but also this is just a general principle. Not everything has to be Sistine Chapel. Not everything needs to be super special, whatever. You can have stuff and not even be guilty, have other pleasures and not even be guilty about it. One of my favorite all-time movies is School of Rock. I legitimately love that movie because the whole movie is about not taking everything so seriously.
Sure.
And the movie itself doesn't take itself that seriously. Like that. Another great example of that sort of a thing where it's just sheer joy, even with like stupid comedy, is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. You know, like
it's a good movie.
It is a great movie because it's all about like actually having something you love, but it's totally unattainable, like being a rock star, and you know all the things that get in your way. But somehow, some way, if you stay true to your mission and you stay true to what's in front of you, you can make it through, and people will help you make it through. Like that's just a good, simple. Wait, you want a general's report on Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure now?
Yes, absolutely, yes. However, I would also like to point out it has the only consistent time travel mechanics I've ever seen in a movie.
The most consistent time travel mechanics? Yeah, totally. Yeah.
No, the only consistent time travel mechanics I've ever seen in a movie.
Does an ab break count as consistent time travel mechanics and rules, Alex? Does it? This is a public service announcement for listeners and followers of Poets at War. Confess your sins and follow on Christ. Do not wait. The enemy takes every opportunity to turn you toward his side and destruction. Always remember, when it comes to your own heart and soul, clean is good.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
We now return you to our war meeting in the trenches on Poets at War.
Yeah, it's
everything else breaks up.
It's pretty good, but yeah, it's a fun movie.
Good movie.
Anyway,
but here's the difference between what I think Brian Sauvé says about the simple as opposed to not everything has to be.
Right, he was basically saying not everything has. No, he was saying not everything has to be jazz and do your weird Phrygian scales and whatever. You know.
Yeah.
He was saying you can do blues because blues hits the heart. You know, you can do something really simple.
There's a difference between what most people will think of as guilty pleasures, which is like something that is bad that you enjoy, and not like that you enjoy ironically, like The Room.
Right.
That everybody, watches and laughs at because it's
the wonderful
so stupid
ice
that you
cream
kind of
suit.
just have to watch.
Sorry, the wonderful ice cream suit. Good gracious. It is a Ray Bradbury book turned into a movie by Disney with absolutely no budget, and it is it's a whole thing.
Okay, I need to go find that. But there's a difference between guilty pleasures, which is watching something bad because you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And simple pleasures, which is watching something that is not the height of art, but you can still enjoy it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
that's
yeah.
Okay, Mini-Me, you just took the exact words that I was going to say out of my mouth.
Well, continue it, Brendan. Yeah. You finish it.
Well, no, but like okay, finishing it. Simple pleasures. That's going to be, unfortunately, for the world that we are in for art, that is going to be what your average person might end up being able to afford, especially with the rampant inflation that's currently going on.
Sure.
But that's okay,
Yes.
because I would argue even simple pleasures can be extremely beautiful.
Yep. Even transcendent.
Not everything can be Sistine Chapel. You're right. Not everything is going to push the boundaries. I know I've ranted on Into the Spider-Verse before, but one of the most amazing things that I think is the fact that that Miles is animated at 12 frames per second in the beginning, while Peter B is at 60, and then he slowly gains frame over
30. He's at 28.9.
Oh, okay, 28.9. Fine. Still, but I the fact that they took the time to use the tools in that way, that gets me so jazzed. I love watching how things are made more than the actual thing itself. That's why I watch the making of The Lord of the Rings more than I actually watch The Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely. The appendices. You're into video games, so I assume you're familiar with the term ludonarrative dissonance or dissidence?
Yes.
Dissonance.
Well, sort of.
Yeah, where it's where the form of the game is conflicting with what the story is trying to tell you. So Uncharted is the classic example where Nathan Drake, is that his name? Whatever it is.
That's his name.
Nathan Drake is supposed to be this like conflicted character who doesn't like killing and all that type of stuff. And then you go through the game and murder hundreds of people.
Yes.
Like a killing machine. It's ludonarrative dissonance. And then you have like critiques of ludonarrative dissonance with Lara Croft, which is basically the new Lara Croft games, which are basically just Uncharted. But where she goes through the game and is supposed to be at the beginning, she's supposed to be this like timid character who doesn't do all of this stuff. Then she kills people, and you have a cutscene where she says, "It shocked me how easy that was." Where it's a critique of the ludonarrative dissonance and actually turns it back into ludonarrative harmony. That's what Spider-Verse did.
Yeah.
It's the mechanic. The process of the filmmaking works with the storytelling.
Yes.
Amazing. It's so good.
Yeah. But like I think like for me that is obviously it's a spectrum, right? It's not like you're not either simple or you're Sistine Chapel. That is something drifting toward Sistine Chapel.
Yes.
When you are pushing, when you are doing something other people haven't done, I think that's sort of the kind of thing, and it can be whatever. But this is where, like, I would say, like, to like people say, oh, avoid tropes because tropes are boring and blah blah blah. Stop it.
Yeah. No.
Get help.
Yeah.
do tropes. Throw all the tropes together in one basket and then make fun of it and laugh.
That's the same as
exactly.
That's the same as rock and rollers saying that we should completely ditch 4/4 time. Like progressive rockers saying we should completely ditch 4/4 time.
We need to do stuff in 5 or 7 or 9. I would argue we should do more in 7 because God made 7 days, and so 7 should be something we get used to. But that's beside the point. No, but like I like how we started on art and education and now we've gone like completely wild.
It's okay. It's okay.
I love this. This is the best.
This is the stuff that they need education on, and your audience needs education on.
Yeah, and like, but like the appreciation of like beauty and stuff. That is I think that is like. Yes, an artist has to develop all of the skills. Yes, they need to experience all the things. Yes, they need, even somebody who's doing drawing needs to learn math because of the golden ratio, because of stuff. They need to learn, and we could argue, and I would argue all education needs to learn how to connect all of the disciplines because God is not a small-minded individual and everything is interconnected in ways and webs that we can't possibly fathom.
Yep.
But the artist needs to learn that. Everyone else needs to learn how to appreciate transcendent beauty and appreciate simple beauty.
Yep. And understand
I have no idea how
to grade those.
And I have no idea how we do.
We're doing it now.
Yeah.
We're doing it now by talking to folks.
Fair.
And we need to treat it that way. That's the thing. It's not just us having a conversation about this kind of thing, but there are people listening. And even though there are dozens and dozens, as we've talked about, right? Whatever. The fact is, people hear this stuff. They hear stuff like Knox Unplugged. They hear other things of this nature. And this is how we change the discussion because people weren't taught this by their fathers. They weren't taught this by their mothers. And you were, I was, and Alex is getting taught by a little bit of his family along with books, kind of a synthesis. And so and so like this is super important to teach people. This is being your family's bard, right? Because go ahead.
But it's not just teaching.
That's right.
Because beauty, I think, is fundamentally a worldview thing. And you can't teach a new worldview. You have to obey your way into it.
Interesting. You can have a worldview presented.
You can have a worldview presented, but that doesn't mean just because you say, yes, I accept that, doesn't mean that it's going to happen until you start acting it out.
Correct. And the practice of doing so, this is why so this is another thing that I think needs to be opened up. Reaction videos on YouTube. A lot of people have been decrying them for a lot of things, including Jason Farley and some others, for the purpose of they are cheap entertainment for a lot of people because look, you felt the same way I did about the thing, kind of reaction. But the fact is, we're appreciating art, and I think that honestly, YouTube reactions, as cheap for content as they are, as a full, regardless of whether you call it abuse of fair use or whatever you want to end up calling it, however you want to attack it. The fact is, these people are trying to appreciate beauty, and I think they're succeeding.
I love watching people watch Nightwish for the first time.
Yeah.
Watching people react, because they always start with the same song, which is Ghost Love Score, because that's the one that everyone recommends first. There's an entire YouTube community called the Nightwish Army. And they flood reaction channels and tell them, watch Ghost Love Score live in Wacken.
Yep.
And everyone has these reactions, and I love watching those because part of it's like, yes, that feeling. I love that feeling. I love that you are feeling that. But also, like that's a guilty pleasure. I say guilty pleasure. It's not a super, like, I understand it's not super high art. Right. That's not what they're doing. But you're right. They are appreciating art.
Well, there's a specific one, and I'll find it and link it in the show notes, tell myself, because I've been actually listening more to the shows afterward, and hopefully I can get it. But there was a reaction. There's this very sweet young lady who was watching Lord of the Rings for the first time. She actually did the full reaction to the full trilogy, and she I think she's Mormon, I can't tell, but she had never really watched any kind of fantasy whatsoever, and she was an extremely tender individual who had a real hard time watching violence of any sort. And when even though she was really freaked out and scared and everything else in the Fellowship with the ring race and all that other stuff, at the end she's absolutely crying, and she said, like, I want to go out and be a better person now. Like, that is the legitimate effect expressed of what a good story is supposed to do. And not only does it shine through with Peter Jackson's work, it shines, Tolkien himself shines through the screen regardless of the changes, and says to her, please be a better person, because Aragorn, because Frodo, because Sam, as supposals in her mind, and she considers them and says, yes, and I want to do that. It is a step in a journey, to your understanding, Brendan, but like, that is worldview presented in its purest form.
That is. It's why
absolutely.
It's why the idea that fiction is inherently lying is wrong. Because a lie is meant to deceive you, and in fiction, no one is trying to deceive you. If anything, it's presenting truths in an alternate form. So anyway,
for more on fiction not being lying, everybody go read Mythopoeia by Tolkien.
That's a good one. I'll say we'll mention this, and then we can start moving toward wrap. I think we're around that time. Let me make sure.
Actually, we've got 15 minutes before an hour and a half.
Yeah, so we can kind of, meander with this and go into whatever else. But what are some of y'all's favorite reactions in general, things to react to? Lord of the Rings is one for me. Rocky is another as far as movies. I love seeing people react to Rocky, because almost all of them are people who hate sports movies and hate boxing, but end up absolutely falling head over heels in love with the Rocky series. And then the other ones for music are Hurt by Johnny Cash's version.
I was going to say that one, yeah.
And Evanescence, particularly Bring Me to Life and My Immortal. Those two songs reacted to are always a treat, because people just, it's so different from anything they've ever experienced usually,
Yeah.
What are some of y'all's favorites? You mentioned Nightwish, Brendan. You got some others. Alex, you got some others?
I know that my wife Kirith loves watching people react to Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah.
The series.
Ooh, so good.
Because and I don't want to go on a huge tangent here, but like, Avatar is totally the perfect example of a series that was made for kids but done right. Because children's literature and children's media should not be basic and simple and thoughtless. Rather, it should have more thought poured into it, so that the child can appreciate it, but as they grow, they gain more appreciation, right?
It kind of reminds me, it kind of reminds me of The Hobbit that way. It reminds me kind of like an Eastern version of The Hobbit almost.
Although it was made in America, but yes.
But yes, yeah. But the mythology is Eastern, right? They swapped
Sure.
Western mythology, and even though it's not
Sure.
the exact same story, it's very much a journey kind of story in the same sort of vein. There's a lot of political stuff like Lord of the Rings, but there's a lot of childlike stuff like the Hobbit. So that's a great one.
Yeah.
I'll drop this here. I really wanted to mention this at some point, but I think I'm going to just go ahead and drop it here. I was probably going to do it in a general's report, but I'll say it here. For general's report, and possibly other videos on down the line, I have a reaction video to Sam's speech in Lord of the Rings that's on this channel.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have seen it, and it's not my first time viewing, but I kind of go into in depth with these sort of poets at war, generals reporty kind of thoughts with it. And I've thought about starting those back up, and I just need suggestions and thoughts because I would like to get some first time stuff. You guys can, you two can give me some stuff, and then anyone listening can give me some stuff they'd like me to react to, and we can do that off air or whatever. But it's something that I feel like would fit on the channel, and something that I can start doing more of, and start hopefully finding some people that will come in through that, because it's good funnel into it. So,
well, this is something that I actually want to say. Like, a lot of people decry reaction videos. My favorite type of reaction videos to watch are opera singer reacts to X music.
Yes.
Music producer reacts to X music. Filmmaker reacts to X film. VFX reacts to X VFX shot.
Oh, those are so good.
Watching somebody who's an expert in their field break down something that they're looking at.
Right.
And to that end, Joshua, I think that yours is more than... It's more than just you going, I'm appreciating art. Look at this, whoop-de-doo, ha-da, 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 ha.
Right.
Because you're coming at it deliberately with this Poets at War lens, like you were saying.
Right.
So I think that, like, if people are going to yell at you for it, stop. There's nothing wrong with textual critique, per se. Too much textual critique disenchants the mind, but...
Right.
But some textual critique is important, and I'll have to think about what I'll have to think about that, because I don't know off the top of my...
Yes, you do.
Well, again, I would say Violet Evergarden.
I was gonna say,
but oh my gosh, Violet Evergarden is so good. People get annoyed and get bored with it because the first 3 episodes are very slow, but they are very slow for a reason. And once you get, I don't want to be like, oh, once you get past episode 3, it's good. No, the first 3 episodes are good. Right. You just don't know why yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, episode 10 kills everybody. Who watches it, but the there's just so much good in that series. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I would just
I might do
watch it once, and then find a scene that you like. It's probably going to be in episodes either in between episodes 7 and 11, because those are the ones where they really start grabbing your heartstrings and unraveling.
Right.
So,
well, Alex, off the top of your head, did you have any suggestions, Alex? And we can come back to you, Brendan. I didn't mean to. Just Alex, did you have anything?
Off the top of my head, maybe a scene of Steve Jobs talking with Lisa.
The scene?
But that's just because that's like one of my favorite movies right now.
I might.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be good.
Jojo Rabbit, maybe.
Yeah, there's that.
That's also just one of my favorite movies. So I think I'm just saying
that's okay.
My favorite movies
people are good. But this is what you do
those.
for reactions. You don't look up stuff that you haven't seen for reactions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's so.
Yeah. Well, I whenever we started talking about reactions, I went to my YouTube history and looked up the word react. It's all like the same 3 channels. So I watch people reacting to
that's
stuff,
the thing.
not the stuff that they're reacting to.
You get connected to certain people. I agree. another thing that the one that I've been looking for reactions on lately, I'm still waiting for Charismatic Voice to do it. I hope that she does do it eventually.
Oh, Charismatic Voice!
I knew you'd know her, but I really want her to do the Song of Doran by Jonathan Young and Colin McGinnis and all those guys. Bobby, whatever, low Bobby Bass, but Bobby Bass, that's it, Bobby Bass. The three of them did Clamavi de Profundis' version of Song of Doran, and they did an amazing job. Super, super deep voices, and I really want to hear her react to the bass. I've been singing it, and it's at the very, very bottom of my possible register. I can't always hit it, but I can hit it sometimes, and so I've been using it to kind of stretch myself downward a little bit lately, and it's a lot of fun because I like bass singing. I don't get to do enough of it, but I really do enjoy bass singing. So well, this is probably a good place to wrap. It might be a little bit short for Poets at War generally, but I'm sure people won't mind too much. We're going to be having Broodcast coming up soon on the 24th, and that should be fun. That's day after Thanksgiving. People are going to be food comed and all the other fun stuff, and so we'll have
hopefully nobody who's a regular dies in Black Friday shopping.
That
seems to have become less of a thing now. But,
we should have,
especially after 2020 and 2021.
We should have Daniel Reed man on the street during Broadcast.
Yes, I'm down for it.
We'll see if he's down.
I'm here for it.
That could be hilarious. Poor Daniel.
Congratulations, you have been voluntold.
Trying to figure out if I could drive up there to be the cameraman for that.
There you go.
I don't think I can pull it off this year. Maybe next year.
Well, everybody, remember, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Tell your children how to appreciate beauty and practice it with them. Right? We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
For more conversations like this with our three intrepid leaders, go to joshuadavidling.com and check out more of Poets at War.